for more on President Trump's last full week in office and this White House transition. We're joined by political analyst Steve Chaggaris. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. This is an unprecedented level of security to protect Joe Biden and to protect his inauguration. He says he feels safe.
Well, he's been trying to put a brave face on all of this, but let me tell you, the way the FBI is talking, the way officials are talking about how they're anticipating significant numbers of people, protesters, perhaps violence. You're seeing that reflected in law enforcement and the military turnout. The question is, with the perimeter so large in downtown D.C., even if people do show up to town, they're not going to get anywhere near the Capitol. They're not going to get anywhere near the inauguration on Wednesday. And so I think Biden does have a reason to feel safe, only because there is so much security here in D.C. right now.
Some have warned of the consequences of an overreaction. Is this not essentially stealing the day from the American people? This is, of course, their celebration, and now they're being left out because of COVID and also because of angry mobs that stormed the Capitol and the response?
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make. I mean, we do have to keep in mind this was always going to be a much smaller inauguration than in past years. This was not going to look like any inauguration in modern history because of COVID. Biden had been signaling that for weeks. They had already said there was going to be no parade. They had already said that they were not going to have nearly as many people turn out to watch in person. And so there was that. And now on top of that, with the security measures, it's really going to look like, just really fulfilling the constitutional duty of swearing in the new president at noon on Wednesday and not much else.
The FBI is warning of possible armed protests in D.C. and all 50 states. Given that we've seen the boost in National Guard here from 21,000 to 25,000, how serious of a threat do you think that is? And I know you're not a counterterrorism expert, but if you were planning something, would you do it when everyone is expecting it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and again, we all I have to go on is what the Justice Department has been saying, the FBI, what local law enforcement officials are saying, and it does sound like that there's a lot of intelligence that people are planning to come to Washington and cause trouble. Will they follow through on that once they see all the security here? It's a very good question. Will people just say, look, you know what, it's not worth going this time, but maybe we'll go in the future? And that's the big question I think people have is, maybe there's a sense that this is okay in Washington for next Wednesday or the next few days leading up to Wednesday. But what's going to happen in Washington after the inauguration, after all the security leaves, and also what's going to happen around the country on Inauguration Day? As you said, that there's 50 states, there's security surrounding capitals in all 50 states. Will people just stay home and cause trouble there? We don't know the answers to these questions, and I think there's just a lot of people in fear right now and keeping their fingers crossed that there isn't any violence on next Wednesday or leading up to it.
There is a history of far-right extremism in America that's tied to all of this long before Trump, but clearly emboldened during his presidency. Where does that momentum go now?
And that's, I don't know the answer to that question. All I can tell you is, let's look at the Republican Party and what are they going to do moving forward, right? You look at House Republicans, and there are many, probably, in the dozens, if not low 100s, of House Republicans who are going to continue to carry the torch for this president. And they look at the base of the Republican Party, and I'm talking about that slice of the Republican Party that you mentioned, the far right, and they look at them as a very enthusiastic part of the party and a key to getting elected, at least to their seats in the House. You don't see that kind of torch carrying in the Senate right now, but in the House there is, and so that's something the Republican Party is going to have to deal with in terms of their own members of Congress. What is the direction of the party moving forward? Are they going to continue to talk to that extreme side of the Republican Party, extreme side of the far right, in order to keep the enthusiasm going with them? Or are they going to broaden out, speak to more moderate voices, speak to more independents, and try to move on from Donald Trump? You're seeing some Republican leaders that are doing the latter, but there are plenty who are still carrying the torch for that extreme side as well.
And we should note Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, suggesting that lawmakers who enabled the riot should be charged. Steve Chaggaris, thank you for your insight.
Thanks, Roee.